Hello, children, and welcome back to another exciting Halloween edition of Masterclass Monday. Today, we explore the grand experiment, Frank Wildhorn's classic musical, Jekyll Hyde. I'm calling this Sexy Monster because it was a true joy to play that sexy monster. Jekyll Hyde began as a penny dreadful in the 1800s. Written by the prolific author Robert Louis Stevenson, who is said to have had a fever dream that inspired the tale. He'd often thought about the duality of man, and when it was published, it became an instant hit. Such a hit, in fact, that it became a very popular play soon after, starring an amazing actor named Richard Mansfield. Now, his reviews were spectacular, the crowds were great, and his performance so disturbed the audiences that people were fainting in the houses. And around the same time, in London, Jack the Ripper had his crime spree, and there were those who connected the two and thought it was the performance by Mansfield in the play that inspired the killer. So since then, Jekyll Hyde has been connected to Jack the Ripper in history, and certainly in the annals of gore and blood, there's a connection. But you might wonder how Jekyll Hyde the musical that you know and love by Frank Wildhorn started. We were students together at the University of Southern California, and as I've said before, when I first signed in, I first met this young composer, sang for him for 3 hours, and there's Frank. He liked me, he cast me in his show, and while I was there, a fellow student named Steve Cuden and Frank got together, and they started brainstorming ideas for new musicals. We always had Broadway in our sights, but one of the things that Frank would do for us, we would sit around for hours and hours in a recording studio and just brainstorm things. And Jekyll Hyde is one of the things that was most inspiring. So we explored as much of the source material as we can. That was John Barrymore's Jekyll Hyde, certainly Frederick March's classic version, an amazing tour de force of performance and odd makeup. Certainly that's where the prosthetic teeth came in that we tried and decided against. One of our favorite versions was Jack Palance's kind of super sexy beast, but we'd sit around for hours and hours in the recording studio and brainstorm different things. And the thing that made Jekyll Hyde a hit show was when Frank collaborated with Gregory Boyd at Houston's Alley Theater. The man is a genius and a real fan of the Grand Guignol style of theater, which brought some flavor to the piece. And Houston was a great place to birth the show, too. Greg was artistic director at the Alley Theater, and he helped us launch the world premiere of this fantastic musical. Now, some of you might remember the Alley Theater facade as being used in RoboCop the movie. It's a very kind of, stark concrete exterior, but a beautiful, beautiful theater. Now here is a look at Susan with Stuart as we're celebrating the world premiere. My son Stuart was a kid at the time. We had a great, great time, and he's now 33, to put it in perspective. Here's a beautiful look at the set, and as you can see, we were drinking HJ7 at the time. But it was a beautiful, beautiful laboratory. Now, the movie that most inspired the actual script of the show was the Spencer Tracy version of Jekyll Hyde. And you can see he is drinking the HJ7. Here he is as Hyde. But the thing that most inspired it was that love triangle between the fiancé and the prostitute. And so here's Jekyll with Lucy, played by the beautiful Linda Eder. And here is my Hyde with Lucy. And here's Spencer Tracy with Ingrid Bergman. So you can see there are parallels to that film, and it was a beautiful, beautiful study in the power of the duality of man, and one of the great, great classic films. And the sexiness of the show certainly was brought in by the women. Hyde was unleashed at the time. Jekyll sometime would be unleashed as well. Started pretty, ended dangerous, and sadly didn't end great for Hyde. Here's our opening night party, Leslie Brickus and our beautiful cake, and one of the great things about that opening experience was having Shirley MacLaine visit us backstage. It was a wonderful celebration of the gypsy magic that is Broadway theater. And then about a decade passed, and we started the Millennium Tour. After Jekyll Hyde had been a hit on Broadway, I had a chance to reprise the role for the national tour. One of the things that was beautiful about that production, I got to work with fantastic people. There's James Clow as Utterson, Sharon Brown as Lucy, Andrew Rivette as Lisa. It was a great, great cast, and the late, great Dennis Kelly as Sir Danvers. One of the things I liked most about playing Dr. Jekyll was that he tried to bring out the best in humanity. From his innocent romance with his fiancée, here played by Andrew Rivette, with blonde hair, dark hair, and then again blonde hair again. And then later on, I got to play with the reigning queen of Broadway, Kelly O'Hara, who was a beautiful, beautiful fiancée and a delight to work with. One of the strengths of our national tour was I got to work with Sharon Brown, an amazing powerhouse performer. We were the first interracial cast of Jekyll and Hyde, and in the song Bring on the Men, she certainly brought on the woman. I loved doing the confrontation. I loved the song Dangerous Game. My Jackies and my Chuckies will testify that there was certainly a splash zone in the first couple of rows. We put it out there pretty hard, and oftentimes in my performances I was compared to Meatloaf, and I don't mind the analogy. I had such fun playing Jekyll and Hyde. There'll be more to this later. We called this tour the Millennial Tour, and it was delightful. I got to meet with Frank when he was getting his doctorate in New York, and there we had a historic meeting of doctors, the three Jekylls, Bob Cuccioli, Rob Evan, and myself, a truly delightful reunion. I still do the confrontation in my show Classic, and I hope one day you'll come and get a chance to see it without the hair. Thanks again for visiting, and I hope you've enjoyed these brief stream of consciousness memories of Jekyll and Hyde. And as always, I always promise to leave you with a little behind-the-scenes secret, and today there's two things. First, I want to tell you about the syringe that we used in Jekyll and Hyde. It was actually a horse syringe, big giant thing, with a laser pointer inside and a reflective thing on the inside, so as you pulled it open, it gave that lasery red glow for the syringe. So it was a pretty simple prop, worked very effectively on the stage. And one time, when I was going to reveal myself to Utterson, I slapped my leg so hard, I hit the syringe and knocked it all the way off the stage. Had to go and pick it up and tell the audience to wait for a second till I came back. Pretty silly, but that's the magic of live theater. And the other behind-the-scenes secret is, how did the transformation work so effectively? And the key to the magic of the hair ballet was a simple scrunchie on my wrist. And you do the flopping around on the floor actively and magically pull your hair back and you're cured. Simple behind-the-scenes secret for Jekyll and Hyde. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for visiting, and I will see you next Monday.